I remember the first time I sold something. It wasn't anything big, just a couple of old books I no longer needed. I listed them on an online marketplace, took a few blurry pictures with my phone, and put a price that I thought seemed fair. The feeling of clicking post felt like throwing a message in a bottle into the ocean, hoping that someone would find it. A day later, someone bought the books. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't a lot of money, just $20, but in that moment, I realized something fundamental. People were willing to exchange money for things I owned. I was 21 at the time, just starting out in college, and I had no idea that this small, insignificant transaction would change the trajectory of my life. Growing up, I had always been taught the value of hard work and education. My parents, immigrants who came to the U.S. in search of better opportunities, had worked tirelessly to provide for our family. They had high hopes for me to follow the conventional path, graduate, find a stable job, climb the corporate ladder, and live a comfortable life. But something about the idea of a traditional job never quite sat right with me. I wanted more. I wanted to create something of my own, something that wasn't just about collecting a paycheck at the end of the month. I wasn't sure exactly what that something was, but I knew I had to find it. That was the year I stumbled into entrepreneurship. After that first sale, I got addicted to the process. I started selling anything and everything I could get my hands on. I would go to thrift stores, garage sales, and even friends' houses to find items they no longer needed. Books, old electronics, furniture. If it was something that had value, I would try to flip it for a profit. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. At the same time, I started learning everything I could about business. I read blogs, watched YouTube videos, and attended seminars when I could afford to. I was determined to figure out how to turn this hustle into something sustainable. The turning point came a year later when I came across a group of people who were making real money online. They were selling products through Amazon, eBay, and their own websites. These were regular people like me, no special degrees or insider connections, who had found a way to build successful businesses from scratch. They were using tools and systems that allowed them to automate the process, freeing up their time while still making money. The idea of creating a passive income stream intrigued me, and I dove in headfirst. I started by listing products on Amazon, selling everything from phone accessories to kitchen gadgets. I spent countless hours researching trends, sourcing products, and optimizing my listings. It wasn't easy. I lost money on some products, and others just didn't sell. There were many late nights filled with frustration, but each small win, each sale, kept me motivated. Slowly but surely, my sales started to climb. At the time, I was still in college, juggling my studies with this side business. It was overwhelming, but I didn't mind. I was learning more in those few hours spent working on my business than I ever did in a classroom. I was developing skills in marketing, negotiation, customer service, and product management, skills I knew would serve me far better in the real world than any degree could. However, things didn't really take off until I made my first big investment. I had saved up around $3,000 from the profits I had made on Amazon, and I used it to purchase a larger bulk of products, wholesale items that I could sell at a much higher margin. It was a risky move, but I was confident in my ability to turn it into a success. The investment paid off. In just a few months, I made back my money and then some. That's when I realized that I had something here. I had cracked the code. By the time I graduated, my business was generating a steady income. I could have chosen to take the traditional route, apply for jobs, and work my way up in a corporation, but deep down, I knew that wasn't for me. I had built something from nothing, and I wasn't about to give that up. So, I took the leap and went full-time with my business. The first year as a full-time entrepreneur was rough. I faced challenges I had never anticipated. There were moments when I wondered if I had made the right decision. There were times when I felt overwhelmed by the pressure of keeping everything afloat. But I stuck with it, learning from my mistakes and adjusting my approach. Over time, things started to improve. I expanded my product offerings, started advertising more aggressively, and focused on customer service to build loyalty. Slowly but surely, my business grew. 3 years later, I had built a brand with a solid customer base. What started as a small side hustle had turned into a thriving e-commerce business. But I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to take it to the next level. I decided to shift gears and start creating my own products. I wanted to have more control over the supply chain, to build something that was uniquely mine. This move required even more investment, both in time and money, but it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Developing my own products gave me the ability to create something truly special, and with that, my business exploded. My brand became recognized in my niche, and I began receiving offers from larger companies looking to collaborate. Eventually, I expanded my business even further. I launched an online course to teach others how to start their own e-commerce businesses. I wanted to give back and help people avoid the mistakes I had made along the way. The course became a hit, and I started mentoring aspiring entrepreneurs. Watching them succeed was incredibly rewarding, and it fueled my passion even more. Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. There were so many moments when I thought about giving up. There were so many obstacles that seemed insurmountable at the time. But with each failure, I learned something valuable. Entrepreneurship isn't a straight path. It's messy, unpredictable, and full of setbacks. But if you're willing to put in the work, to keep going when it feels impossible, it can also be incredibly rewarding. I'm not rich by traditional standards, but I'm living a life that I designed. I wake up every day excited about what I do, and I know that I've created something that's all mine. I've learned that success isn't just about making money. It's about the freedom to live life on your own terms and to have a positive impact on others. So, if you're thinking about starting a business or taking the leap into entrepreneurship, just know that it's not easy, and it won't happen overnight. But if you're persistent, if you keep learning and adapting, you can create something that lasts. My story is proof of that. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. I was 28 when I faked being a millionaire to sell a product I hadn't even built yet. I was dead broke. Not the poetic kind of broke. I owe my roommate $17 for groceries and I haven't told him yet kind. I had just quit a job at a marketing firm where I'd been slowly soul-draining myself into the beige walls of our open-concept hellscape. I had no savings, no plan, and no backup. What I did have was a dumb little idea for a piece of software I thought small businesses might use. A kind of AI-driven dashboard that helped owners understand where they were bleeding money, sort of like Mint meets QuickBooks, but simplified. I called it Bright Ledger. It didn't exist beyond a mock-up in Figma and a bunch of post-it notes on my bedroom wall. I knew I didn't have the resources or the time to build the whole thing out before trying to sell it. So I decided to pitch it like it already existed. I printed business cards that said Founder and CEO, Bright Ledger, built a sleek fake landing page that said, used by 200-plus businesses, and rented a cheap suit from a place that smelled like funerals and old coffee. My first potential client, was a local gym franchise owner named Derek. I found him at a Chamber of Commerce networking event where I definitely didn't belong. He was loud, direct, and incredibly bored by everyone except himself. Perfect. I pitched Bright Ledger like it was already used by chains bigger than his. We've been helping fitness franchises reduce wasteful spending by over 20% on average. Total lie. I told him it integrated seamlessly with their point-of-sale software. It didn't. Provided actionable insights. Nope. And could onboard in less than 72 hours. I had no code. So technically true. He nodded. Then said the words I wasn't prepared for. Can you show me tomorrow? My ops guy will be here at 10 a.m. I didn't sleep. I stayed up all night assembling a clickable prototype in Figma, learning enough basic JavaScript to make a couple of fake dashboard animations, and pasting screenshots into a PowerPoint with a dark background to make it look premium. Somehow, the demo worked. They didn't touch it much. Derek's ops guy asked smart questions, and I gave very confident non-answers. At the end, Derek said, "This could be big. We'll pilot it for 90 days at our main location. If it does what you say, we'll roll it out." I walked home in a trance. Then I puked in a trash can on the street. Now I had to build the thing. I called an old college friend who had gotten rich off crypto but still lived like a hacker hermit. I told him the truth. Every inch of it. He laughed so hard I thought he was choking, then said, "You're an idiot. I love it. I'll help, but I want 40%. We settled on 30%. The next 6 weeks were a blur of code, coffee, and patching bugs at 2 a.m. The software barely worked, but it did work. Enough to pull real data from Derek's PS, generate semi-reliable reports, and look polished from the outside. Then the unexpected happened. Derek introduced us to another business owner. And then another. Word spread fast. Apparently, no one had been offering small and mid-sized franchises an easy financial overview tool that didn't look like it was made in 2003. Within 3 months, we had 10 paying clients. Then 30. We were charging $99 month per location. My bank account had gone from double digits to mid-five figures. I cried when I paid my roommate back. The cracks started showing at around customer number 50. We had no customer support team. I was taking every email, every bug report, every angry phone call. My partner was drowning in technical debt, rewriting whole sections of code every other night. Then came the moment that nearly killed everything. One of our biggest clients, a restaurant chain with 17 locations, had a data breach. Turned out we had screwed up our database access controls. Badly. Their CFO was furious and demanded answers and compensation. We thought it was over. But instead of running, I met with them in person. I owned the mistake. I showed them the work we'd already done to fix it and promised additional security audits at our own cost. I didn't spin it. I just said, "You trusted us too early. I won't pretend otherwise. Let us earn it back." Somehow, they stayed. We raised a seed round 4 months later. $800K from an angel group that specialized in B2B SaaS. We hired 2 engineers, a support rep, and a part-time CFO who kept us from blowing it all in 60 days. 2 years later, BrightLedger was pulling in $1.2 million ARR. I still wore that same cheap suit for pitches because it felt lucky. We never spent on ads. All our growth was word of mouth, one gritty, panicked referral at a time. I tell this story a lot, but I never share it with pride. I lied to get in the room. That's not strategy. That's desperation. And it could have blown up in my face in 100 different ways. But I've learned this. Most businesses don't die because the idea is bad. They die because no one fights like hell to sell it. Selling it, even before it's ready, even when it's duct tape and hope, that's the dirty, stupid magic of the early days. Now we're up to 400 plus businesses, and we finally feel like we belong. But I still keep the first fake version of BrightLedger saved on my desktop, just to remind myself where the truth started lying. In 2016, I was broke, divorced, 32, and sleeping on my brother's couch in Columbus, Ohio, with $187 to my name and a mountain of student loan debt. I had a journalism degree, 5 years of failed freelance writing attempts, and zero confidence left in myself. My wife had left me after years of watching me chase pipe dreams and eat cereal for dinner. I don't blame her. At rock bottom, I took the most humiliating job I could think of, delivering food for a regional pizza chain. I was the only driver with a college degree. The 19-year-old assistant manager bossed me around like I was his little brother. I kept my head down, drove my '08 Civic that smelled like stale fries, and made barely enough to keep my phone alive and gas in the tank. But here's the thing. On those long delivery drives, I had time to think. A lot of time. And one thing I kept noticing was how many small businesses were struggling with their online presence. I'd deliver to a bakery or a pet grooming shop, and when I'd Google them, they'd have a 1-star Yelp review from 2012 and a Facebook page last updated when Obama was president. It hit me. I may have been a failure as a writer, but I knew how to build a brand. I knew content. I knew how to tell a story. Maybe I could do it for them. Not as a writer, but as a brand guy. One night after a long shift, I made a super simple website using a free Wix template and called my company Sparrow Street Creative. I used to live on Sparrow Street in college. I thought it sounded cool. I listed 3 fake services: social media management, copywriting, and branding strategy. All things I'd done in my failed freelance years. Then I cold emailed 100 small businesses in the Columbus area. I wrote every email by hand. I made sure it didn't sound like spam. I complimented their product, linked their Instagram, and gently offered help. One person replied. Just one. A guy named Mike who ran a local kombucha company out of a shared commercial kitchen. He said, "I can't pay you, but if you help me with my Instagram, I'll give you a free 6-pack every week." Deal. I spent 10 hours a week photographing bottles in my brother's backyard, writing corny captions about gut health, and learning Canva like my life depended on it. I even made a fake photoshoot setup using a white sheet and a ring light I borrowed from my niece. Within 2 months, Mike's followers grew from 480 to 4,000. A small win, sure, but Mike's friend, who ran a vegan meal prep company, noticed. She paid me $300 month to do whatever you did for Mike. That was the first real check I'd seen from something other than delivery tips in a year. I was hooked. I used the $300 to buy a decent used Canon camera from Craigslist, a $15 tripod, and a better domain name. I started posting my own work on LinkedIn, before that was even a cool thing. I wrote about small business branding like I was Gary Vee with a journalism degree. I wasn't a guru. I didn't talk in buzzwords. I just shared what I was learning. By summer 2017, I had 6 clients. None paid me more than $500/month, but I had a system: show up, take content, schedule posts, write newsletters, and coach them on branding decisions. I wasn't great at it, but I was consistent. I didn't flake. I answered every email within 12 hours. That alone put me ahead of half the freelancers in the game. Fast forward to 2018, I finally moved out of my brother's place. I was making about $4,000/month, barely more than a retail manager, but I was in charge. I rented a 300-square-foot studio, bought a standing desk, and printed business cards with the name Sparrow Street Creative embossed in gold. My mom cried when she saw them. The big break came when a coffee subscription startup in Chicago saw one of my posts on LinkedIn. They'd just gotten seed funding and were looking for someone to make them look cool online. I had zero idea what I was doing at that scale. They offered me $500/month to manage their entire brand presence. I said yes and then didn't sleep for a week. To meet the demand, I hired a friend from college who had just been laid off. She was a graphic designer and 10x more talented than me. We worked out of my studio, living on gas station coffee and frozen dumplings, pushing content 12 hours a day. She became my co-founder. By 2019, we had 8 clients, 2 part-time contractors, and our own tiny office and a co-working space. Sparrow Street was real. We'd grown completely through word of mouth and my obsessive content sharing on LinkedIn. We never ran ads. We never paid for leads. And then COVID hit. In the first week of March 2020, 5 clients canceled. Revenue dropped from $13K/month to $4K overnight. I thought it was over. But instead of panicking, we got aggressive. We launched a pay-what-you-can branding sprint for small businesses trying to pivot online. We didn't make much, but we helped over 40 businesses in 4 months. Some paid us $100, others paid nothing. But a few of them remembered us. By the end of 2020, as things stabilized, those same companies started calling again. One of them referred us to a medium-sized DTC pet food company. That one referral turned into a $60K/year retainer. We hired 2 more people. I stopped doing everything myself. I even took a weekend off. My first real vacation in 4 years. As of 2024, Sparrow Street Creative is a boutique brand studio with 12 full-time employees, over $1.2 million in annual revenue, and a waitlist. We still don't run ads. We still don't chase leads. Everything we get is because someone worked with us and told someone else. Last month, I went back to that old pizza place to pick up dinner for a team party. The 19-year-old assistant manager who used to boss me around? He's now the general manager. He remembered me and said, "Man, didn't you used to drive for us?" I smiled and said, "Yeah, just for a bit." He asked what I was doing now. "Just running a little business," I told him. Then I left a $100 tip on a $23 order and walked out. Not to be smug, just to say thank you. My name is Jacob, and I build a 6-figure business selling overpriced garden rocks on Etsy. You read that right, rocks. Stones. Gravel with branding. And no, this isn't satire, although I wish it were some days. Back in early 2020, I was 26, working a mind-numbing office job in insurance claims processing. I wasn't miserable, exactly, but my soul was dissolving one spreadsheet at a time. My only escape was tending to a little backyard garden in the evenings. There was something calming about arranging stones, placing succulents, and sipping a cheap IPA in the twilight while pretending I had it all figured out. Then the pandemic hit. The office job became a work-from-home job, which then became a "we're downsizing" phone call in June. I had about $8,000 in savings and a panic attack that felt like a heart attack. I applied to 40 jobs in 3 weeks and got 2 rejections and 38 cold silences. One night, completely fried, I posted a picture of a small Zen garden I'd built in an old cigar box to an obscure Facebook group. I didn't even think about it. Just something like, "Made this to keep my brain from melting." It helps. The post blew up. Not like million likes viral, but for a group with maybe 2,000 people, it got hundreds of comments and dozens of private messages. People wanted to buy it. A woman offered $45 for the thing I had made with backyard pebbles and a rake I fashioned from bent paper clips. I sold it. Then I made another. And another. I called them Pocket Zen kits. I sourced better boxes from a local thrift shop, found some sand at a craft store, and started building little rakes from bamboo skewers. I cleaned rocks in my bathtub like a lunatic. Within a month, I had an Etsy store. I named it Stone and Still. I cringe now at how pretentious it sounded, but people loved it. The aesthetic was very millennial, minimal, calming, intentionally imperfect. My pictures were moody, the description pseudo-poetic. The kit sold for $35, $60, depending on size and stone type. I made $1, 200 in my first month. $2, 300 the second. By December, I'd cleared $6, 000. I had no employees, no real business knowledge, and I was hand-gluing moss into tiny corners like a gremlin. But something had clicked. Then, a weird email landed in my inbox. It was from a buyer for a boutique chain of stores on the West Coast. She'd seen the kits on Pinterest. She wanted to stock 200 of them for the holiday season. I told her yes, hung up, and threw up in my bathroom sink. I had 2 weeks. I asked my sister, who was stuck at home too, to help. We set up a production line in my kitchen. She glued boxes. I raked sand. My cousin came over and packaged orders for beer money. We got it done. Barely. I shipped them out with prayers and several layers of bubble wrap. And they sold. Fast. The boutique reordered. In January, I reinvested the profits into a better website, upgraded packaging, and outsourced some of the manual work to a small workshop that usually made party favors. I paid them per unit, and they let me customize everything. It freed me up to focus on marketing. I started a TikTok account. My third video, a time-lapse of assembling a kit while rain fell outside, hit 200K views. The next one did 1 million. Suddenly, I was shipping 40 to 60 orders a day. Here's where things got wild. People weren't just buying the kits. They started asking if I sold just the rocks. Where can I get stones like this? Do you sell these exact ones separately? So I tested it. I put up a listing called Mindful Pebbles Set, 5 natural stones for meditation and decor. It was $18.99. The product photo was just 5 small, polished river stones in a cotton pouch. They sold out in 2 days. I had stumbled into a niche I didn't know existed. Aesthetic, emotionally comforting objects. Tiny luxuries. It wasn't about the rocks. It was about what they represented: calm, order, peace. People wanted to buy serenity in a box. From there, I leaned in. I expanded into crystal-like stones, without claiming any mystical powers: moss balls, tiny bamboo fountains, incense holders. I hired a friend to help with shipping. My parents thought I had joined a cult. By late 2021, Stone and Still was making $14,000, $18,000 month in revenue. I was profiled in a digital magazine about unconventional entrepreneurs. I gave a webinar. I was still in my old hoodie, shipping literal rocks, and talking to people about intentional living. Of course, there were problems. One time, a shipment of 500 boxes was ruined by humidity because I stored them in my uncle's garage without realizing it leaked. I lost $200 and spent 2 weeks scrambling to remake every kit. Another time, a supplier sent me dyed stones instead of natural ones, and customers freaked out because the colors bled. But the biggest challenge was scale. By 2022, I was overwhelmed. I had 3 part-time workers, a rented office space, and more demand than I could handle. I didn't want a warehouse empire. I didn't want to be CEO of Pebble Co. So I pivoted. I streamlined the product line, cut it from 30 SKUs to 8. I doubled down on the core kit, added customization, and raised prices. I built digital guides and added mindfulness journaling prompts. I created subscription boxes with quarterly themes. Then, I licensed my designs to a home goods brand. I now earn royalties from their sales, which outpace my own. As of now, I work maybe 15 hours a week. The business brings in about $25,000 month in gross revenue. After expenses, I clear around $8, 10K personally. I no longer wash rocks in my bathtub. I travel. I have time to read again. I even got into ceramics. And yes, people still laugh when I say I sell rocks. Hell, I laugh too. But here's what I've learned. You don't need a revolutionary idea. You just need to find something that makes people feel something. If you can bottle a mood, a vibe, a need, you're in business. Mine happened to be tranquility in the form of sand and stone. I think a lot about the Jacob who lost his job, panicked, and made his inn garden out of a cigar box. He didn't know what he was doing, but he started, and that made all the difference. I accidentally started a business that now makes $1.2 million/year, and I still have imposter syndrome every single day. This wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to be a teacher. I got my degree in education, did my student teaching in a sleepy Midwest suburb, and genuinely loved working with kids. But then the pandemic hit during my second year of teaching, and everything unraveled. Remote teaching crushed my spirit. Watching kids lose interest, dealing with tech issues, and managing lesson plans for students who barely logged in, it drained every ounce of passion I had. I held out for a year, and then quietly resigned. No big goodbye. No career pivot announcement. I just quit and moved back into my parents' basement. I was 26 and unemployed, with $37,000 in student debt and a useless degree. I tried to freelance as a tutor but barely made enough to cover my car insurance. Out of sheer boredom, I started making little printable worksheets, simple math drills, spelling puzzles, logic problems, and posted them on Teachers Pay Teachers. At first, I priced them at $1 each, thinking maybe another teacher would find them helpful. I made $1 for the first month. The next month, I made $19. Then $43. That third month, I thought, okay, let's see how far I can push this. I spent all of August locked in my room designing content. I learned Canva, bought a cheap iPad to sketch illustrations, and devoured every SEO tip I could find for the platform. I uploaded 3 to 5 new products a week. Some bombed. Some got hundreds of downloads. I studied what worked, duplicated it, repackaged bundles, offered seasonal themes. By December, I'd made $3,100 that month. I still remember showing my dad and him just blinking at the screen and going, "Is this real money?" It was. I used it to pay off a big chunk of my credit card debt and bought a new desk. I started taking things more seriously in 2021. I launched a small brand, opened a Shopify store, and reinvested everything into it. $50 logo from Fiverr, $200 on email marketing software, $1,000 on a better laptop. But the breakthrough came when a teacher friend casually asked if I had anything she could use for special ed kids. She taught a mixed needs classroom and said most of the worksheets online weren't usable for her students. I had no idea how to design for that audience, but I offered to make a few custom worksheets for free. She sent me some examples of what she needed: high contrast visuals, simple language, repeatable formats. I uploaded the versions I made to my store and tagged them as special education resources. That niche exploded. Within 6 months, my income had tripled. Apparently, there was a huge demand for well-designed SPED content. I wasn't an expert, so I brought in 2 contractors, retired special ed teachers, who I found through a Facebook group. I paid them hourly to review my materials and consult on curriculum accuracy. We went from just worksheets to printable games, sensory activity cards, social stories, and even visual schedules for kids with autism. I hired a virtual assistant to manage customer emails. I took a basic course in business accounting and set up an LLC. Fast forward to early 2023. I had made $750,000 in gross revenue, with a 60% profit margin. It was just me, 2 contractors, and a VA. It still didn't feel real. I didn't know any other entrepreneurs. My friends were in grad school or working regular jobs. I'd try to explain what I did and they'd go, "Oh, you sell stuff to teachers? Like on Etsy?" It wasn't insulting, just confusing. Even my mom asked if it was legal. I decided to take a wild leap and go to a small education startup conference in Austin. It cost $200. I almost canceled the trip 3 times. But that weekend changed everything. I met a founder who ran a literacy app, and we hit it off. He asked if I'd ever considered turning my printable content into interactive tools. I laughed and said I couldn't code. He said, "You don't need to. Just license the content and let someone else build the platform." 2 months later, I signed my first licensing deal. It was a flat $40,000 for a batch of literacy materials. I nearly cried when I saw the wire transfer hit. That deal turned into 2, then 4. I had built up nearly 900 products over 3 years and companies were hungry for content. Most edtech startups are good at tech but bad at curriculum. I had the opposite problem. Now I have three main revenue streams. My Shopify store, which brings in about $60K month, licensing deals, roughly $300K year, and an email subscription service for teachers that I soft launched in 2024. That makes another $20K month and is growing. I still work from a spare bedroom in my condo. I still feel like I'm faking it. Sometimes I wake up panicked that it'll all collapse, that people will realize I don't have a master's degree, I don't belong in edtech, and I'm just a former teacher making worksheets. But then I check my inbox and there are messages from teachers saying, "Your resources helped my student talk for the first time," or "This is the only thing that kept my classroom engaged this week." That keeps me going. No one tells you that success doesn't feel like a finish line. It feels like a constant negotiation with your own doubt. If you're reading this and feel like you're too ordinary to start something, please know I felt that way too. I didn't have money, connections, or any startup background. I had Google, Canva, and insomnia. That was it. Just start. Even if it's small. Even if it's clumsy. You have no idea what you might build when no one is watching. In 2017, I was 29, broke, divorced, living in a crappy studio apartment with water-stained ceilings and a neighbor who thought 3 a.m. was prime time for karaoke. I had a desk, a laptop with a cracked screen, and a dead hole so deep I swear I could hear an echo when I opened my bank app. I had just quit my job as a mid-level marketing exec at a crumbling startup because the CEO wanted to pivot to becoming an AI-driven lifestyle brand, without having any AI or lifestyle to speak of. So, with nothing left to lose and not much left to pawn, I did the dumbest thing I could think of. I started a business. The idea came during a walk. I saw a food truck with a line a mile long and another one 2 blocks down with no one. The difference? Branding. One looked like a modern streetwear store on wheels, with slick fonts and minimalist design. The other looked like it had been decorated by a toddler with a sticker obsession. The food was probably just as good, but first impressions matter. That was it. I'd start a branding company for food trucks. It sounded ridiculous. Too niche. Too unstable. But I knew marketing, and I had just enough industry connections to fake the rest. I called it Drip Plus Dine. The name came to me during a beer-fueled shower. I mocked up a site that looked fancy but was held together with free plugins and duct tape. I posted in every Facebook food truck group I could find, DM'd truck owners on Instagram, and offered to rebrand them for $100 flat. Logo, menu design, social strategy. I got laughed at. One guy sent me back a middle finger emoji, but one person said yes. His truck was called Meatball Magic, and it looked like a clown car mated with a pizza box. I worked 3 straight nights on his new brand, renamed it Corelli's, designed a logo with a vintage Italian feel, made him a clean digital menu, and ran a month of Instagram ads targeting local office parks. The dude doubled his foot traffic in 2 weeks. He gave me a $200 tip and told 5 of his food truck buddies. That was the break. Within 3 months, I had over 40 clients and couldn't keep up. I raised my prices, hired a friend who could actually draw, and leased a tiny office above a vape shop. We were still broke, eating cold burritos and sleeping under our desks some nights, but people were noticing. We had a wait list. Food truck owners were flying in from other states to talk branding. I'll never forget the moment I realized this might actually work. A guy from Austin wired me $5,000 without even seeing a draft. He said, "I saw what you did for Corelli's. Just do that. $5,000 for a logo and a plan." I felt like I'd hacked capitalism. But success comes with its own set of enemies. About a year in, a larger agency tried to poach my clients. They started offering dirt cheap rates and promised full-spectrum visual optimization, whatever that means. I panicked. We lost 4 big clients in a week. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I went full doomsday mode and nearly fired my whole team. But then my designer, Amanda, sat me down and said, "They can't do what we do. They don't care like we care. They don't know these people." So, we pivoted. We stopped selling logos. We started selling community. We launched a membership service, The Commissary, where food truck owners got monthly content packs, ad templates, seasonal menu graphics, and access to a private support forum. For $99 month, they got a family. Within 6 months, we had 600 members. That's when investors came knocking. I turned them all down. I knew what would happen. They bring in consultants, tell me to pivot to SaaS, and gut everything that made us special. Instead, we stayed lean and got smarter. I automated our onboarding, built a tiny team of freelancers in 3 time zones, and created what we called brand-in-a-box kits, DIY branding packs for new trucks. By the end of year 3, we crossed $1.2 million in revenue. It still felt surreal. I went from overdrawing my checking account to paying off my debts and buying my parents a car. I hired my brother. I got a dog. I still worked like a maniac, but now it felt like building something, not just surviving. There were still bad days. One time, a payment processor froze our funds for 2 weeks over a technicality, and I had to personally cover payroll. Another time, a disgruntled client left fake negative reviews that tanked our reputation until we fought it back. But every time we stumbled, we got up stronger. In 2021, we hit a tipping point. One of our clients went viral on TikTok and mentioned us. Overnight, our inbox exploded. We had to shut down new signups. That week alone brought in $80K. I remember looking at my cracked old laptop, still sitting on a shelf in my office like a battle scar, and laughing until I cried. I kept it as a reminder. It all started with nothing. Today, Drip Plus Dine works with over 1,000 food businesses across the U.S., and we've expanded to cafes, ghost kitchens, and even some restaurants. We're not a startup anymore, we're a movement. A little rebellion against boring branding and soulless agencies. And I still take on $100 client a month. No fanfare, no press. Just one person trying to start something from nothing. Because I remember exactly what that feels like. I never intended to be an entrepreneur. Honestly, I was the kind of guy who rolled his eyes at TED Talks and thought networking was just a buzzword for desperate people handing out business cards like Halloween candy. But then the layoffs hit. I was 29, working at a mid-tier marketing firm in Denver. I had a steady job, a modest apartment, and a girlfriend who was just starting to talk about moving in. Life wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Until it wasn't. The company folded in less than 6 weeks. My severance was 3 paychecks and a mug with the company logo on it. Job hunting felt like speed dating while drowning. Dozens of resumes sent out, LinkedIn cold messages, interviews that led nowhere. My bank account began to look like it had a terminal illness. I needed money. Fast. I'd always had a knack for making things look good. In college, I used to redesign party flyers for fun, taking my frat's garbage Photoshop disasters and making them look like event invites for an LA rooftop lounge. It was stupid, but people noticed. So, out of desperation, I made a post on Craigslist. We'll design flyers, posters, ads, fast turnaround, cheap rates, $25 per design. That was the start. The first week, I got one client, a local dog walking service. I made them a flyer with a smiling golden retriever, a leash, and a guy in hipster sunglasses. They loved it. Word got around. 2 weeks later, a vape shop hit me up. Then a friend of theirs. Then someone running a backyard music fest. I was doing 3 designs a day, and my inbox was getting chaotic. So I made a website. Not fancy, just a template with my work samples and a form. I called it Snap Brand. My pitch was clear, fast, stylish, affordable. $40 a design, pay up front via PayPal. I learned quickly that small businesses crave speed and consistency more than polish. They didn't want an artistic vision. They wanted a flyer by Tuesday that didn't look like it was made in Microsoft Paint. By month 3, I was pulling in about $3,000 a month. Still working from my kitchen table, still answering every email myself. But I felt alive in a way I never had behind a desk. Then something broke the cycle. I got an email from a guy named Leo who ran a chain of food trucks. He wanted a brand refresh. I quoted him $500 for a new logo, menu designs, and a wrap concept. He sent the money within 5 minutes. The work turned out well. Really well. He posted a before and after on LinkedIn. It blew up. Suddenly, I wasn't getting $40 flyer requests. I was getting branding packages. $1,200 here. $2,500 there. People started asking for websites. I didn't know how to build websites, but I knew a guy from college who did. I offered him a 60-40th split on every job. He was in. We became a 2-man team. Then 3. I hired a girl I found on Twitter who could crank out logos in her sleep. Then another guy who handled SEO. By year 1, SnapBrand was making $200,000 in revenue. We weren't rich, but we were stable, building, evolving. I took every dollar I could spare and poured it back into better systems, faster turnaround times, smoother onboarding, better templates. We raised our rates. But growth wasn't linear. It never is. In year 2, I made a huge mistake. I took on a client I shouldn't have. A regional gym franchise wanted a full rebrand, but their management team was chaotic and indecisive. We went through 12 logo versions. I burned through 100 hours on that project and ended up barely breaking even. Worse, they left a bad review online, claiming we ghosted them, which was a lie, and it dropped our Google rating from 5.0 to 4.3. In the small agency world, perception is everything. I had to make a choice: stay small and safe, or go bigger and risk it. I chose risk. We pivoted from one-off projects to retainer-based branding services. Monthly payments, guaranteed hours, less chaos, more predictability. I launched an Instagram account with tips and quick design breakdowns. We started a newsletter. To our surprise, people actually subscribed. Our little agency started to feel like a real brand. At the end of year 3, we hit $720,000 in revenue. I rented an office. We had 6 full-timers and 3 freelancers. My girlfriend, now fiancée, quit her job to run ops and client communications. We got health insurance, paid vacation. We still weren't Silicon Valley rich, but we weren't scraping Craigslist for $40 flyer gigs either. Here's the kicker. I never took a single business class. Everything I know came from getting burned, Googling solutions at 3 a.m., and talking to other freelancers on Reddit and Discord. Snapbrand is 5 years old now. Last year, we crossed $1.1 million in revenue. We've branded coffee shops in Portland, e-commerce brands in Germany, a YouTuber's merch line, and a dog food subscription service that just got VC funding. I still design things sometimes, mostly when I can't sleep. It reminds me why I started. If you're thinking about taking the leap, do it. But don't romanticize it. It's hard. It's stressful. You'll lose sleep, make mistakes, question yourself, and have moments where it feels like everything is going to collapse. But if you can stick through that, you might just build something no one can take away from you. Even if it started with a $25 Craigslist flyer. I was 31, broke, and living in my ex-girlfriend's spare bedroom when I accidentally launched a company that would hit $2.3 million in revenue within 18 months. This wasn't a SaaS unicorn or a tech disruption. It was paper. Literally. Let me rewind. After getting laid off from a mid-level marketing job at a health supplement startup, I bounced between freelance gigs and temp jobs for about a year. At one point, I was helping a friend run his mobile detailing business, which meant I was driving around LA with a trunk full of microfiber towels and trying not to melt in the sun. Not exactly the life I imagined when I got my MBA. I was running out of money and options when my ex, we had broken up amicably and stayed friends, offered me a room in her duplex. I swallowed my pride and moved in with 2 duffel bags and a laptop. That was rock bottom, or so I thought. One night, I was browsing Etsy while half drunk on boxed wine, trying to find a birthday card for my sister that wasn't full of glitter or puppies. Everything felt generic or overly sentimental. I wanted something snarky, honest, kind of stupid. In short, something real. I gave up and decided to just make my own. I had an old copy of Photoshop, so I whipped up a basic white card that said, "You're not getting older, you're just becoming a classic." Like a VHS tape. Or polio. I printed it on some cardstock I had lying around. My sister laughed so hard she posted it on Instagram. A few of her friends DM'd her asking where she got it. I posted a few more designs on Etsy under the name Trash Panda Paper Company. Yes, inspired by a raccoon meme, and forgot about it. A week later, I had for sales. I freaked out. I didn't even have shipping envelopes. So I biked to Staples and bought a pack of bubble mailers with the last $11 in my bank account. I shipped those cards out like I was sending nuclear launch codes, wrapped in tissue paper, handwritten notes, even stickers. I wanted it to feel like getting a letter from your weirdest, most creative friend. In 2 weeks, I had 43 orders. By the end of the month, 179. I ran out of card stock and started buying reams of it with money I didn't have, praying the sales would continue. They did. 3 months in, I hit 1,000 sales and had made just under $6,000 in profit. I wasn't rich, but for the first time in a year, I was making money doing something that didn't make me hate waking up. Then came the flood of knockoffs. I knew it was coming. That's Etsy. The minute something gets traction, it gets copied. But the weird thing was, my sales didn't drop. If anything, they went up. People told me they bought from me because they liked my style, my packaging, the note I included, the vibe. That's when it hit me. I wasn't selling greeting cards. I was selling moments. The design, the wording, even the typo on one of the cards, "Congratulations on your engagement." They made people laugh and laugh hard. That kind of emotional connection is addictive. So I leaned in. I launched a Shopify site and moved away from Etsy. I hired a local artist I found through Reddit to help me scale designs. I rented a tiny studio space that used to be a dog grooming salon. I set up an email list, ran Facebook ads, and posted TikToks of myself reading our worst reviews in a dramatic British accent. The real turning point came when a celebrity, I still don't know who, but I'm guessing one of the B-list comedians, shared a photo of one of our cards on Instagram. The next day, we did $8,000 in sales. That month, we cleared $92,000. I hired 2 of my old college friends who had been laid off during the pandemic to help pack orders. We worked 14-hour days, listening to true crime podcasts and drinking too much coffee. It felt like a startup, but we were selling cards with jokes like, "Sorry your baby is ugly." Just kidding. Kind of. At the 1-year mark, we were averaging $120,000/month. I launched a subscription box, 3 exclusive cards a month with a rotating theme, and it sold out in 48 hours. We had 3,000 monthly subscribers by the end of Q2. Our customer retention rate was absurd. People were buying these cards in bulk just to send random love notes to friends. And then, just as I was planning to raise money and go legit, I stopped. Not the business. Me. I stopped chasing the scale-at-all-costs dragon. I looked around and realized I was already making more money than I ever had, doing something I loved, with people I trusted. Why was I about to sell equity to strangers? So I didn't. I kept it lean. We stayed a team of 5, shipped everything ourselves, and outsourced only the printing to a local shop that gave us discounts in exchange for free cards. Now we're at $2.3 million in revenue, 62% profit margins, and I still write every single card myself. Well, with help from Reddit sometimes. I get asked if I regret not going big. And I don't. I don't want to manage 200 people. I don't want to be on a yacht in Ibiza. I want to keep writing weird cards that make people laugh while crying into their overpriced oat milk. So yeah, I built a paper empire out of sarcasm, sadness, and $11 of bubble mailers. Entrepreneurship is weird. Hey, friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I didn't mean to start a business. It happened the same way you realize you're halfway through a bottle of wine on a Tuesday night. Accidentally, but with a weird sense of inevitability. 2 years ago, I was working a dead-end IT support job at a mid-sized law firm. My title was Systems Analyst, but in reality, I was resetting passwords for boomer lawyers who still referred to anything digital as the internet machine. I was 32, had a communications degree I never used, and was barely making rent on my 1-bedroom in a city too expensive for people like me. The spark came from a busted microwave. At 2 a.m., my cheap Amazon Basics microwave shorted out while reheating leftover pad thai. It popped, smoked, and then died like a soldier in a war it never signed up for. I sat in my underwear staring at it, angry and irrational. Then, out of sheer frustration, I Googled, "Why do cheap microwaves suck?" That led me down a 3-hour rabbit hole of videos, teardown articles, and obscure forums. Turns out, a lot of people were pissed about crappy appliances. Not just performance, but also about how hard they were to repair, how fast they broke, and how they all kind of sucked. Somewhere in that blurry-eyed research binge, I found a tiny subreddit where someone posted a sketch of a modular, reparable microwave. That idea haunted me for weeks. In my boredom at work, I started sketching out a modular appliance design. I'm not an engineer. I can barely wire a lamp, but I knew enough to Google my way into prototyping. Over the next 6 months, using weekends and saved-up vacation days, I hacked together a Frankenstein microwave with magnetic panels, a removable heating unit, and a plug-and-play control board. I called it Hotbox. I had no idea what I was doing, but I posted my prototype to Reddit and said, Would anyone actually want this? I expected to be laughed off the platform. Instead, it blew up. Thousands of upvotes. Comments from designers, engineers, even a VC guy who said, "DM me if you want to talk funding." I thought it was a prank. Within a month, I had quit my job. Not because I was confident, far from it, but because I knew if I didn't try, I'd spend the rest of my life resetting passwords and hating myself. I used my $7,000 in savings to hire a freelance industrial designer and an engineer from Upwork. The three of us worked remotely, stitched together with Zoom calls and Trello boards. We turned Hotbox from a janky prototype into a sleek, modular appliance with swappable parts, USB-C updates, and a design that didn't look like a 2002 dorm microwave. I launched a Kickstarter asking for $50,000. We hit that in 12 hours. By the end of the campaign, we had $420,000 in pre-orders. That's when things got real. Production was hell. We went through 2 manufacturing partners in China who ghosted us mid-prototype. A third factory promised the moon, then sent back samples that looked like melted lunchboxes. Our designer quit. Our engineer got poached by a startup in Berlin. I was alone, bleeding money, and delivering updates to 2,400 backers who were getting restless. I slept maybe 3 hours a night. My hair started thinning. I developed an eye twitch. But I kept going. Eventually, I found a contract manufacturer in Ohio who said they'd try a small batch. The catch? It would cost almost double what I had left from the Kickstarter. I maxed out my credit cards, sold my car, and borrowed $10,000 from my younger sister, who made me sign a contract stating she would take my PS5 and my laptop if I defaulted. Somehow, the first batch shipped. Then the reviews started trickling in. People loved Hotbox. It wasn't perfect. Some units had door alignment issues, and there was one hilarious case where a user accidentally microwaved the USB-C update dongle. But the overall sentiment was shockingly positive. Reddit blew up again. A few YouTubers picked it up. One of them called it the iPhone of microwaves, which I still think is ridiculous, but it helped. Then came the retail offers. A major home goods chain emailed me, asking for a meeting. I walked into their office wearing a thrifted blazer and the only clean jeans I had. Their director of innovation, a guy named Tom, who looked like he bench-pressed briefcases for fun, loved the pitch. They ordered 10,000 units. I had no infrastructure, no warehouse, no team, nothing. Just a dream, a credit score in freefall, and one very patient manufacturer in Ohio. So I incorporated as Hotbox Incorporated, hired my first employee, a logistics wizard named Ramya who I found on Reddit, and took out a small business loan at an interest rate I still cry about. We shipped 10,000 units, then 30,000 more. In 1 year, we went from a kitchen table idea to $3.2 million in revenue. But here's the real kicker. We didn't just make a microwave. We sparked a conversation. People started asking why all appliances weren't built like this, reparable, upgradable, and actually designed for humans. That's when I realized this wasn't about one product. It was about an idea. Now we're working on a modular toaster oven and a smart air fryer. We're still small, just 14 people, but we're profitable, growing, and stubbornly independent. The other day I got a call from a big appliance conglomerate offering to buy us out for $12 million. I said no, because I remember what it felt like to sit in front of a dead microwave at 2 a.m., full of frustration and pad thai. I remember feeling invisible in a job that didn't matter. And I remember the way people reacted to something built with purpose. This isn't just a business. It's my second chance. And I'm not giving that up for anything. 5 years ago, I was broke, exhausted, and one bad day away from quitting everything. Now, I run a bootstrap company with 30-plus employees, 7 figures in ARR, and, more importantly, a level of freedom I never thought I'd have. Here's the story, warts and all. It started in my apartment in Cleveland, Ohio. I was 27, just fired from my third job in 2 years, and back to delivering Uber Eats to cover rent. I'd always been a side project guy, websites, apps, Shopify stores, but nothing ever clicked. I had ADHD-fueled ambition and a graveyard of half-finished ideas. The thing that changed everything? A 22-minute phone call with my grandma. She called me one night, worried. Not because I was broke, though she knew, but because she'd been scammed online. Some fake tech support site had convinced her to pay $299 to remove a virus that didn't exist. I was furious. I got her money back after 3 days of back and forth, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be thousands of people like her, older, non-technical, getting ripped off. That night, I bought a domain, safesenior.net. I wanted to build a site that explained common internet scams in simple language, and maybe offer a low-cost hotline or email service for help. I had no plan, no team, and $87 in my checking account. But I had one thing I'd never had before: purpose. I spent the next 2 months writing guides, how to spot fake tech support, phishing emails, Amazon impersonators. I built the site on WordPress, designed the logo in Canva, and made a report a scam form using Google Forms. My MVP was basically a glorified blog with a contact button. Then I launched it to crickets. 17 visitors in the first week. All bots. It stayed like that for a while. I almost gave up. But then I posted the story of my grandma on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Reddit. It blew up on r/technology and got shared over 8,000 times. The next week, I had 3,400 visitors and 119 scam reports submitted through the site. Now I had a real problem. People wanted help. I was getting 30 to 50 emails a day, mostly from older folks or their relatives. I couldn't keep up. So I made a deal with myself. I'd offer one help for a flat fee, $25 per case. People were skeptical, but enough trusted me. In 2 weeks, I made $125. I cried when Stripe sent the payout. The first hire was my cousin. She was between jobs and had experience in customer service. I paid her $15/hour under the table to handle the email inbox and used most of my earnings to pay her. That let me focus on improving the site and testing some paid ads. I ran $50 Facebook campaigns targeting boomers. Nothing. I tried Google ads with keywords like "I got scammed online" and "how to report a scam." Jackpot. For every $1 I spent, I made around $3 in revenue. That's when it started to feel real. Fast forward 6 months, SafeSenior.net had handled over 4,000 scam reports. We'd helped return about $250K to victims, and I was bringing in $8K/month in revenue. Not insane startup money, but more than I'd ever made. That's when a customer asked a question that changed everything. Can I just call you when this stuff happens? Phones. Of course. I spun up a toll-free number with Grasshopper and charged $10/month for unlimited scam support calls. We'd walk them through anything fishy, review emails, explain things. I called it Safe Senior Protect. Within a month, 112 people subscribed. Then 300. I had to bring on real tech support agents. Found 2 guys on Upwork with IT backgrounds. Trained them using call scripts and screen recordings. Set up a simple ticketing system in Zendesk. By the end of year 2, we had 1,700 subscribers paying $10/month and had added an annual plan at $100/year that 40% opted into. That was our first taste of MRR, monthly recurring revenue. I became obsessed. We started getting calls from credit unions and assisted living centers. They wanted to partner or license our service for their residents. That led to Safe Senior Enterprise, which let institutions buy bulk plans at a discount. Within 6 months, 3 regional banks signed up. By year 3, we hit $480K in revenue, had a team of 12, 4 full-time, and 0 investors. I'd never taken a cent of VC. All growth came from cash flow, referrals, and relentless reinvestment. And yeah, it wasn't all smooth. A PR nightmare happened when a YouTuber misunderstood our service and called us a subscription scam. We got dogpiled. Reddit threads, 1-star reviews, angry emails. I was crushed. But we responded with transparency. A public letter, full refunds to anyone unhappy, and video explainers of our process. We lost 300 subscribers in 2 days, but gained 500 over the next month. People respected the honesty. We also hit internal turbulence. One of our top agents turned out to be outsourcing his work to a buddy for half pay and pocketing the rest. Fired him, but the lesson stuck. Culture matters, even for remote teams. Now, 5 years in, we've helped over 90,000 people avoid or recover from scams. Revenue just crossed $1.6 million/year. We have 31 employees, 17 full-time, and we operate in all 50 states. Our hotline handles an average of 2,800 calls per week. The site now includes scam simulators, webinars, and even a Scam Buddy program that pairs older folks with vetted tech-savvy volunteers. We get acquisition offers all the time, some legit, some sketchy, but I'm not interested. Not yet. I still think about that $299 scam and my grandma's voice on the phone. That moment made me an entrepreneur. Not the first sale, not the LLC, not even the 7 figures. It was the moment I stopped trying to be clever and started trying to be useful. If you're sitting on your own idea, broke, discouraged, wondering if it's dumb, ask yourself this. Who does this help? If you can answer that honestly, and it's someone real, keep going. You might be a lot closer than you think. I never expected to be here, sitting in my office with a view of the city skyline and a business that's grown beyond what I thought was possible. But like most entrepreneurs, I didn't start out with this dream. It was all born out of desperation. It all began back in 2015. I was 27 and had just been laid off from a job I thought was my big break. I'd worked as a marketing assistant for a mid-tier tech company, and when they announced their first round of layoffs, I was at the top of the list. I had no savings, no fallback plan, and no idea what I was going to do next. I felt like I had failed at life, and the thought of starting over was terrifying. I remember sitting in my small apartment that night, staring at the wall. I knew I had to do something. The job market was tough, and I wasn't getting any bites from recruiters. The only thing I could rely on was my skills, marketing, writing, and a bit of design. In that moment, I decided to try something crazy. I would start my own business. I didn't have a clear vision of what I was doing, but I figured if I could just help a few people with their marketing, maybe I could scrape by. I opened my laptop, wrote up a basic website, and created a small portfolio with a few samples of what I had done in my previous job. I set up a profile on Upwork and started cold emailing local businesses. To be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to price myself, what to charge, or how to even get clients to take me seriously. At first, it was slow. Really slow. I'd spend days crafting emails that went unanswered or trying to engage with people who weren't interested. I had one potential client who asked for a proposal, but they never responded after I sent it. It was disheartening, but I didn't give up. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. Around the 6th month mark, things started to click. I landed my first big project. A small local business needed help with their social media presence. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and I delivered results. That led to a few more projects. Slowly, I started building a reputation, and with that, more clients began to trust me with bigger tasks. After a year of grinding, I had enough steady income to take a leap and rent a small office. I hired my first employee, someone I had met on a project. She was a graphic designer, and we quickly became a good team. Having her around allowed me to focus on the bigger picture while she handled the design work. That's when I realized that I wasn't just building a business, I was building a team, a culture. But even as the business grew, there were hurdles. In 2017, I hit a roadblock. I had to let go of several employees due to cash flow issues. The market was changing, and I had to pivot. I had gotten too comfortable offering one service, digital marketing, and it wasn't enough to sustain the business long term. I knew I had to diversify. That's when I decided to focus on content creation. I had always been good at writing, and I saw a growing demand for high-quality, original content. So, I shifted my focus to content marketing. We started offering blog posts, articles, and even video scripts. At first, it felt risky. We were essentially changing our entire business model. But to my surprise, the demand for content exploded. Clients loved the new services, and we were able to attract even bigger names in the industry. 2018 and 2019 were the years when my business truly started to soar. We had expanded to a full-fledged marketing agency, offering everything from social media management to full content creation and email marketing. But even with the growth, I was still a hands-on CEO. I was managing projects, signing new clients, and overseeing every detail. It wasn't sustainable, and I knew I couldn't keep it up forever. That's when I hired my first real operations manager. She was a game changer. She took over the day-to-day operations, allowing me to focus on strategy and growth. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. With her at the helm of operations, I could focus on what I was best at, expanding the business, making big decisions, and ensuring we stayed ahead of the curve. But even as we thrived, I had my doubts. In 2020, the pandemic hit, and the world came to a halt. Businesses everywhere were pulling back on marketing budgets, and I feared for the worst. I had to make a tough decision. Should I lay off employees and reduce overhead, or should I take a gamble and try to ride it out? I chose to gamble. I decided to double down on digital marketing, content creation, and helping businesses pivot to online platforms. I knew that the businesses that adapted would survive, and I wanted to be there for them. In the end, it paid off. As businesses scrambled to shift their operations online, we were there to guide them. Our business not only survived the pandemic but thrived. By 2021, we had grown significantly. We had expanded into new markets, hired more employees, and even landed major clients that we had once thought were out of our reach. Our revenues were up, and I finally felt like I had made it. But that's when I realized something important. I wasn't happy. I had everything I thought I wanted: success, money, recognition, but I was miserable. I was constantly stressed, burned out, and disconnected from my team. The weight of running a growing business was taking its toll on my mental health. I realized that I needed to make some changes if I wanted to be truly successful. So, I did something radical. I stepped back. I hired a CEO to take over the day-to-day operations and decided to focus on the parts of the business that brought me joy: creative strategy, working with clients, and mentoring my team. I also took time for myself. I started meditating, exercising, and spending more time with my family. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Now, in 2025, things are different. The business is still growing, but I've learned the hard way that success isn't just about numbers. It's about balance. It's about happiness. It's about enjoying the journey and not just the destination. Looking back, I never could have imagined this life. But sometimes, when you're desperate and willing to take risks, the universe gives you a shot at something greater than you ever expected. And that's the thing I'm most proud of, taking that shot, even when I didn't know what I was doing. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone starting out, it would be this: don't give up. The first few years are brutal, and you'll question whether it's worth it. But if you keep pushing, if you keep learning and adapting, it will eventually click. Just don't quit too soon. The journey is long, and it's not always pretty, but in the end, it's worth it. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. Honestly, I was the guy who rolled his eyes every time someone said they were hustling or grinding. I liked the predictability of a paycheck, the comfort of a job title, and the ability to clock out at 5 and not think about work until the next morning. But then again, the universe doesn't really care what you like. It started with a sandwich. More specifically, the same soggy turkey sandwich I ate every day from the downstairs cafe at the tech company I worked at in downtown Seattle. The company was fine. I was a product manager, pushing feature updates no one asked for and sitting in endless meetings about agile frameworks. But that sandwich, it became symbolic. Every bite tasted like the mediocrity I had somehow signed up for. I think the real turning point came on a Tuesday. I remember it clearly because Tuesdays were when Henry from finance microwaved fish. I was on my third Zoom call of the morning, and my Slack notifications were pinging like Morse code from hell. I stood up to stretch and saw my reflection in the black mirror of my monitor. I looked exhausted. Not tired, existentially drained. My shoulders slumped, tie slightly askew, hair in need of a cut. I thought, this isn't who I wanted to become. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment like a madman. I wasn't unhappy because of my job, exactly. It was that I had no ownership over anything. I was a cog. Replaceable. Bland. I remembered something my dad used to say before he died: either you build your dream or someone hires you to build theirs. The next day, I quit. No plan. No side hustle. Just an overwhelming desire to make something, anything, of my own. I drained my savings, sold the leased car, and moved into a studio apartment that smelled like cat piss and lost hope. The idea came during a grocery run. I was standing in the cold drink aisle, looking at all the bottled teas. Sweetened, unsweetened, lemon, peach, green, black, but nothing stood out. They all looked the same: minimalist fonts, pastel labels, vague promises of zen. I grabbed one and took a sip. It tasted like regret and artificial lemon. That night, I started sketching ideas. What if tea wasn't about calm? What if it was about fire, grit, hustle, energy? The opposite of what everyone else was selling? And that's how the idea for feral tea was born. I wanted to make a line of teas that didn't whisper to you with yoga fonts and bamboo art. I wanted it to scream, each flavor named after something unhinged. Labels that looked like metal band album covers. Caffeine that could slap you out of bed. The first batch was brewed in my kitchen, using a janky Amazon teapot and herbs I bought from a local co-op. I had no idea what I was doing. I Googled every step. I messed up a lot. Once, the batch fermented and exploded in my fridge. Another time, I accidentally used dried stinging nettle and had a rash on my tongue for a week. But I didn't stop. Every failure felt like a badge. I launched the first version of the product online 6 months later. The branding was wild, black bottles with jagged white font, each tea named like a punk song. Rage Earl, Chamomile Carnage, and Matcha Madness. I shot product photos in an abandoned warehouse with my friend Juno, who knew how to make everything look 10 times more badass than it really was. I made 500 bottles. I sold 11. I thought it was over. But then, a YouTuber who reviews weird products bought Chamomile Carnage, tried it on his live stream, and lost his mind over how strong it was. He didn't even like it, but the video went viral. Everyone in the comments wanted to know where to get the tea that tastes like a bar fight. Overnight, I had 8,000 orders. I panicked. I didn't have the supply, the manufacturing, the logistics. My Stripe account froze from the sudden influx of sales. I worked 18-hour days fulfilling what I could, refunded hundreds of people, and used that chaos to find a local bottling partner who could help me scale up without compromising the flavor or vibe. Feral tea became a meme. A statement. We had slogans like "Calm is for cowards" and "Drink or die." I hired my first employee, an ex-bartender named Luis who wore fingerless gloves and brewed tea like it was a martial art. Our second employee was my landlord's daughter, who I hired because she could juggle inventory spreadsheets while vaping. A year later, we were in 130 independent retailers, mostly tattoo parlors, comic shops, and local gyms. I turned down offers from Whole Foods because I didn't want to dilute the brand. We got a cease and desist from an actual metal band called Carnage Chamomile. I printed it on t-shirts and sold out in a day. Revenue hit $2.1 million in year 2. I paid off my debt. I took my mom to Italy for her 60th birthday. I started sleeping better. But I never forgot the sandwich. So when we opened our first feral tea bar in Seattle last year, I put that soggy turkey sandwich on the menu. We don't sell it. It sits there in a glass box labeled, "What could have been." Now, don't get me wrong, entrepreneurship sucks in a million ways. I'm more stressed than ever. There are nights I wake up panicked about packaging defects or FDA compliance or trolls on TikTok claiming we put meth in our matcha. But I've never once looked at my reflection and thought, this isn't who I wanted to be. That guy in the mirror now? He's got tea stains on his shirt, bags under his eyes, and a look that says, let's see how far this madness goes. And he's mine. Let me take you back to the summer of 2014. I was 26, living in a cramped apartment in the heart of a city where dreams were supposed to come true but often felt more like an endless grind. I had been working at a corporate job for almost 4 years, climbing the ladder slowly, but surely, all while feeling like I was stuck. Don't get me wrong, I had the kind of job people would envy. A steady paycheck, health benefits, and a clear career trajectory. But there was a nagging feeling deep inside that I wasn't truly living. I wasn't doing something I was passionate about. I wasn't creating anything. Every day, I'd sit in my cubicle and look out the window, wondering what it would feel like to escape the predictability of corporate life and do something of my own. It was one of those random conversations with a friend that would change everything. His name was Ben. We had been college buddies and had kept in touch over the years, although our lives had drifted in different directions. He had taken the plunge into the world of entrepreneurship right after graduation. I admired his courage, but had always thought it was something that wasn't for me. He called me one evening, as he often did, to check in and talk shop. He told me he had just launched a new product, and it was starting to gain traction. I was intrigued and asked him more about it. What's it like, Ben? I asked, genuinely curious. It's incredible, man. Every day feels like a new challenge, but also like you're building something that could have an impact. You've got to embrace the grind, but it's worth it when you see the fruits of your labor. That conversation stuck with me. I had always known that my true calling wasn't going to be found in a cubicle, but hearing Ben's passion about his own venture reignited something in me. I spent the next few weeks mulling over the idea of starting something of my own. I wasn't sure what, exactly, but I knew I had to make a change. Ben, ever the supportive friend, had already begun planting seeds in my mind. You've got skills, man. You've got knowledge. You've got connections. The world is your oyster. At first, the fear of failure held me back. The rational side of my brain kept saying, what if you fail? What will your family think? What if you lose everything? But then, I remembered something my grandfather used to say, the biggest failure is not trying at all. So, I took a leap. I decided I was going to leave my cushy job and venture into the unknown. I didn't have a clear idea of what business I'd start. The only thing I knew for sure was that I wanted it to be something I cared about, something I could pour my energy into. One night, while lying in bed, an idea came to me. I had always been into fitness, but I hated how expensive and inaccessible quality gym equipment was. What if I could make fitness products, something that didn't cost an arm and a leg but was still high quality? The idea clicked. I was going to create an affordable line of gym equipment designed for people like me, busy professionals who wanted to stay fit but didn't have the time or money to invest in high-end equipment. The next day, I started researching. I had no background in manufacturing or product design, but I wasn't about to let that stop me. I spent hours online, reading articles, watching YouTube tutorials, and reaching out to people in the industry. I learned about sourcing, branding, packaging, and how to handle the logistics of running a business. I also learned that there was a lot I didn't know, and that was okay. I wasn't looking for perfection. I was looking for progress. By the end of the first month, I had a basic business plan in place. I found a manufacturer overseas who could create the products I envisioned. I started developing a brand identity, something that felt fresh, motivating, and relatable. I was in this for the long haul. I had invested my savings into the venture, so there was no turning back. Fast forward to October 2015. After a year of hard work, sleepless nights, and constant self-doubt, my first batch of products was ready. I remember the feeling of holding those first units in my hands. It wasn't just about gym equipment. It was about proof that I could do this. I could create something from scratch. I had turned an idea into reality. I launched my website, set up an online store, and waited. At first, there were no sales. Then, a trickle of orders came in. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me going. Every sale felt like a small victory, a step towards something bigger. I shared my story on social media, posted testimonials, and offered discounts to early customers. Slowly, the word began to spread. I reached out to influencers and offered them free products in exchange for reviews. Some said yes, others said no, but with each yes, I gained a little more traction. By early 2016, the business started to gain momentum. I was still working part-time to supplement my income, but things were looking up. I had a loyal customer base, and I was getting better at marketing and managing the operations. I was spending all my time building this business, even if it meant sacrificing time with friends and family. The grind was relentless, but I was in love with the process. In 2017, something happened that changed everything. A well-known fitness influencer with over 1 million followers posted a picture of herself using one of my products. Sales spiked overnight. Suddenly, I was no longer just a guy selling gym equipment in his spare time. I was a business owner with a growing brand. The exposure led to opportunities one never imagined. Retailers reached out to me, asking if they could carry my products in their stores. I was overwhelmed, but I also knew that this was the moment I had worked for. By the end of 2018, I had quit my part-time job and was running my business full-time. I had hired a small team, and we were scaling faster than I had ever anticipated. In 2019, we hit 7 figures in revenue, a milestone I had only dreamed of a few years earlier. Looking back, I realized that the road to success was never easy, but it was worth every challenge, every setback, and every moment of self-doubt. The journey from corporate employee to entrepreneur was a long one, but it taught me more about myself than I could have ever imagined. The key to success wasn't having the perfect idea from the start. It was about taking risks, learning along the way, and never giving up, no matter how tough things got. As I sit here today, reflecting on how far I've come, I still remember that feeling of uncertainty when I made the decision to take the leap. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: don't let fear stop you from following your dreams. If you're willing to put in the work and learn from your mistakes, you might just end up with something bigger than you ever imagined. I didn't just build a business. I built a life I'm proud of. And the best part? I'm just getting started. I never thought I'd be in a position to tell my story. In fact, I wasn't even sure I had a story worth telling until the last year. Now, as I sit here, looking at the business I built from nothing, I realize that the struggle, the failures, and the lessons were all worth it. So here's how it all started. I was 23 when I dropped out of college. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew that the traditional route of getting a degree and working a 9 to 5 wasn't for me. The first few years after I dropped out were rocky. I tried a few different jobs, most of them dead ends that didn't teach me anything valuable. I worked in retail, did some freelancing, and even tried my hand at a couple of small side businesses that didn't pan out. I had no plan, no guidance, and definitely no direction. My friends were getting their degrees, starting their careers, and getting engaged, while I was stuck in a loop of uncertainty. But everything changed one day. I was working a freelance gig for a small local business that was barely getting by. The owner, a guy named Mark, was a few years older than me, but had already built a small but loyal customer base. We hit it off, and I found myself spending more and more time at his store, brainstorming ideas and offering suggestions. One day, while we were chatting about marketing, Mark mentioned something that clicked for me. He said, "The one thing I can't do is build a brand that stands out. But if I could just get my brand in front of more people, I think this place could really take off." It wasn't an epiphany, but it felt like one. I saw how important branding was to a business, and I realized that I had the skills to help businesses grow. Over the next few months, I spent every free minute learning about branding, digital marketing, and e-commerce. I devoured articles, took online courses, and learned as much as I could about the industry. Slowly, I began to put together a business idea. I had no money to invest and no experience running my own company, but I had passion and a vision. That was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. I decided to launch a small branding and marketing agency. I didn't want to work with the big guys. I wanted to help small businesses, especially local ones like Mark's, who were struggling to stand out in a crowded market. I put together a basic website, created a portfolio showcasing the work I'd done for free, and started reaching out to businesses in my area. Most of my cold calls went unanswered, and the ones that did respond were either skeptical or uninterested. But I kept pushing. My first breakthrough came when I landed a local restaurant as a client. They had a decent customer base, but were invisible online. Their website was outdated, and their social media pages were non-existent. I told them I could completely revamp their branding and online presence for a very affordable price. They took a chance on me, and I dove into the project with everything I had. The restaurant rebranded, we built a beautiful new website, and I took over their social media. In a few months, their online engagement skyrocketed, and their in-store traffic grew as a result. They were ecstatic, and word started to spread. More clients started knocking on my door, and I had my first taste of success. At first, I did everything myself: design, marketing, client communication, you name it. But as the business grew, I realized that I couldn't do it all alone. I hired a small team of freelancers, designers, copywriters, and social media managers to help me handle the workload. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, like mismanaging projects, overpromising results, and underpricing services, but each mistake was a lesson. Every setback taught me how to build a better system and how to improve my service. A year into the business, I was feeling pretty good about the direction I was headed. But then, I hit a wall. A huge one. I had overextended myself, taking on more clients than I could handle. I was working 12-hour days, barely sleeping, and the stress was taking its toll. A few clients started to notice that the quality of my work was slipping. They didn't fire me, but they expressed dissatisfaction, and that stung. I had built something from scratch, but now it felt like I was on the verge of losing it all. I had to make some tough decisions. I cut back on the number of clients I was taking on and started focusing on quality over quantity. I restructured the business, streamlined my processes, and started working with a smaller, more dedicated team. The results weren't immediate, but slowly, I began to get my footing back. I also realized that in order to grow sustainably, I needed to focus on systems and delegation rather than trying to do everything myself. The next few years were a roller coaster. I expanded my team, hired full-time employees, and started working with bigger clients. But with growth came new challenges, more overhead, more responsibility, and higher expectations. There were moments when I wanted to quit, moments when I thought that the business was growing too fast for me to keep up. But I stuck with it, and little by little, I built a brand that people started to trust. By the time I reached my 30th birthday, my agency was in a good place. I had a solid client roster, a reliable team, and a reputation for delivering results. Looking back, it's hard to believe how far I've come from that 23-year-old who had no idea what he was doing. The journey wasn't easy, and there were plenty of moments when I thought I would fail. But every failure, every mistake, was just another step toward building something real. I've learned that entrepreneurship isn't about having a perfect plan or making the right decisions every time. It's about persistence, adaptability, and learning from your failures. You don't need to know everything from the start. You just need to be willing to figure things out as you go. These days, I'm more focused on scaling my business, helping others start their own ventures, and giving back to the community that supported me. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm proud of how far I've come. And if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that I wouldn't have gotten here if I hadn't taken that leap of faith all those years ago. To anyone out there thinking about starting their own business or taking a risk, do it. It won't be easy, and there will be times when you want to give up, but the rewards are worth it. And even if you fail, the lessons you learn will set you up for something greater. Just keep pushing forward. You've got this. I always believed that success was about the grand ideas. I thought that if you had a brilliant concept and a killer pitch, everything would just fall into place. It wasn't until I faced the hardest year of my life that I realized the truth. Success is built on the small decisions that you make every day and how you rise after the inevitable falls. It all started when I was 28. I had a decent job in a marketing agency, the kind of job that many people would be envious of. I worked with a group of talented professionals, and I was doing well financially. On paper, my life seemed perfect. But inside, something wasn't right. I had this gnawing feeling that I wasn't meant to sit behind a desk, answering emails and attending meetings all day. I had bigger dreams. I wanted to create something of my own, something that had my name on it. So, I started working on an idea I'd been kicking around for years, a subscription-based service that delivered healthy snacks to your door. I know, it sounds cliché now, but back then, it felt revolutionary. Health and fitness were on the rise, and everyone was becoming more conscious of what they were eating. I wanted to help people eat better, without the hassle of spending hours at the grocery store or trying to figure out what was good for them. I spent nights reading everything I could about the food industry, subscription models, and logistics. I did the math, hired a freelance graphic designer to create a logo, and launched a simple website. The idea was simple, really. A monthly subscription box with a variety of healthy snacks, delivered straight to your door. I called it SnackFit. At first, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. My friends and family loved it, and I had a small but loyal group of customers who kept coming back. I was so excited. I truly believed I had found the key to success. But I soon learned how wrong I was. The first setback came in the form of logistics. Getting products to customers on time and keeping the costs low proved to be far more complicated than I had imagined. My suppliers weren't as reliable as I thought they would be, and shipping costs were higher than expected. The margins were so tight that I started dipping into my savings just to keep the business running. But the real kicker came when I lost my main investor. I had pitched the business to a few potential investors, and one of them seemed particularly interested. He was willing to invest a significant amount of money, but after a few months, he pulled out. He claimed that the business model wasn't scalable and that the competition was too fierce. I was devastated. I put everything into this idea, and now it felt like it was slipping through my fingers. For the first time, I seriously considered giving up. I thought about going back to my 9-to-5 job, taking the easy route. But there was a part of me that wouldn't let go. I realized that I didn't want to fail, not because of a lack of effort or because the market wasn't ready for my product, but because I hadn't figured out how to handle the small problems. The details that often go unnoticed until they become too big to ignore. So, I started again. I took a step back and analyzed every part of the business with a fresh perspective. I started by rethinking the logistics. I reached out to smaller, local suppliers who were more flexible and could work with me on a tighter budget. I negotiated shipping deals and explored other ways to cut costs. I also changed the subscription model to make it more flexible, offering one-time purchases alongside the regular subscription option. It was a gamble, but it felt right. One of the biggest lessons I learned was to focus on the customer experience. I began communicating more directly with my customers, asking for their feedback and really listening to their concerns. I wanted SnackFit to be a brand that people trusted. I wasn't just selling snacks, I was selling a healthier lifestyle, and I needed to make sure that came through in every interaction. Months passed, and things started turning around. The small tweaks I made to the business model started to pay off. The customer base grew slowly, but steadily. Word of mouth helped, and my reputation as a reliable, customer-centric brand spread. I started making enough money to cover my expenses and even began reinvesting into the business. But success didn't come easy. I continued to face challenges, some small, some large. I remember the first time I got an email from a customer who was unhappy with the snacks they received. They had a dietary restriction that I hadn't taken into account, and they were furious. I was crushed, but I took it as a learning opportunity. I added more customization options to the boxes and offered a satisfaction guarantee to make sure people felt heard. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Years went by, and SnackFit became a small but successful business. I started hiring a team, people who believed in the mission as much as I did. We launched new product lines, improved the website, and even started collaborating with fitness influencers to spread the word. The brand grew, and it became something more than just a subscription box. It became a lifestyle brand that people were excited to be a part of. The turning point came when a major retailer reached out to me about carrying SnackFit in their stores. This was the big break I had been waiting for. We negotiated the deal, and for the first time, my business was going to be available on a national scale. The moment I signed the contract, I felt a huge sense of relief. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the validation that I had built something worthwhile. But even with all the success, I never forgot those early days, the sleepless nights, the self-doubt, the times when I thought it was all going to fall apart. Those moments were just as important as the victories. They taught me resilience, patience, and the importance of the small steps. Looking back, I realized that entrepreneurship is not about having one big, game-changing idea. It's about persistence, learning from failure, and constantly refining your approach. You can't control everything, but you can control how you respond to the challenges. SnackFit is now a thriving business, but the real success lies in the journey, in the grit and determination it took to build something from the ground up. And that's what I want people to know, that it's not just about the big moments, but the everyday decisions that shape the path to success. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, and dreams were often dismissed as fantasy. My parents were hardworking, but they lived paycheck to paycheck, and the thought of anything beyond that wasn't part of their reality. They instilled in me the value of hard work, but they also taught me to be cautious, to avoid taking risks. Play it safe, my dad would always say. There's no point in dreaming big if it means putting everything at risk. For the longest time, I followed that advice. I went to college, got a degree in marketing, and landed a decent job at a local advertising agency. The work was steady, the paycheck was reliable, and it didn't take too much out of me. But deep down, something was missing. I couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be more to life than this. One day, while working late, I overheard a conversation between two colleagues. They were talking about a side hustle they had started, an online store selling custom-printed shirts. At first, I didn't think much of it. It seemed like one of those fun, little projects that never go anywhere. But as I listened more, I realized they were making a decent amount of money. They had started with just a small investment and, over time, built it into a profitable venture. That's when the idea hit me. What if I could do something like that? I had a passion for fashion, and I always enjoyed experimenting with designs and creativity. Maybe I could start my own side hustle too. But, unlike my colleagues, I wasn't planning to just dabble. If I was going to do this, I wanted to go all in. At first, I didn't tell anyone. I was still in the mindset of playing it safe. What if it failed? What if I lost everything? But then I realized that if I didn't try, I'd always wonder what if. I decided to take the plunge. I spent every free moment after work researching e-commerce platforms, learning about social media marketing, and figuring out the logistics of building an online store. I started small. I found a print-on-demand service, designed a few shirt graphics, and set up a basic online store using Shopify. My initial investment was modest, around $200 to get everything off the ground. I remember feeling both excited and terrified as I clicked Publish on my first product listing. I wasn't expecting much, but I was hoping for something. Maybe just one sale to validate my efforts. It didn't happen immediately. For weeks, my website sat there, with barely any traffic. I poured my energy into social media, trying to engage people and drive traffic to my site. I posted daily on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Some days, I'd get likes and comments, but no sales. I was starting to doubt myself. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this after all. The fear of failure was creeping in. But then, one morning, I checked my email and saw a notification. I had made my first sale. It wasn't a huge order, but it didn't matter. I had done it. Someone, A complete stranger had bought something I designed. I felt a rush of excitement, like I had just crossed a milestone. That one sale gave me the confidence to keep going. I didn't stop there. I began experimenting with different designs, refining my marketing strategies, and reaching out to influencers for collaborations. Slowly but surely, sales began to pick up. I reinvested every penny I made back into the business, improving my website, creating new products, and running ads. Over time, the store started to gain traction, and the sales kept coming. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were setbacks, frustrations, and mistakes. I remember one particularly tough month where I had a big promotion planned, only to have an issue with my print-on-demand supplier that delayed all my orders. Customers were angry, and I felt like I was about to lose everything. It was a low point for me, and I seriously considered giving up. But I didn't. Instead, I took full responsibility, communicated openly with my customers, and offered refunds or discounts to those affected. The experience taught me a valuable lesson in customer service and transparency. As the months passed, I started seeing real growth. My online store was making enough to cover my bills, and I was even able to quit my job and focus on the business full-time. That moment was surreal. The security of a steady paycheck had been replaced by the uncertainty of entrepreneurship, but I couldn't have been more excited. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control of my own destiny. I spent the next year working tirelessly, building relationships with suppliers, scaling my marketing efforts, and expanding my product range. I hired a small team to help with customer service and fulfillment, and I focused on improving the customer experience. Slowly but surely, the business grew into something bigger than I had ever imagined. But the journey wasn't over. I realized that to stay competitive, I had to continuously evolve. I started branching out into new product lines, collaborating with other brands, and exploring international markets. It wasn't easy. It required a lot of late nights, trial and error, and a willingness to adapt to change. But the rewards were worth it. Looking back, I never would have imagined that a simple idea, selling custom-printed shirts online, would turn into a full-fledged business. There were so many times when I wanted to give up, when the challenges seemed insurmountable. But each time, I pushed through, because I knew that the only way to fail was to stop trying. Now, I run a successful e-commerce brand with multiple employees and a thriving online community. My business has expanded far beyond shirts, and I'm constantly exploring new opportunities. But more than the money or the success, I'm proud of the journey, of proving to myself that I was capable of more than I ever thought possible. If I could give any advice to aspiring entrepreneurs, it would be this: don't let fear of failure stop you from chasing your dreams. The road will be tough, but the rewards, both personal and financial, are worth the effort. And remember, it's never too late to start. The key is to begin, to take that first step, and to keep moving forward even when it feels impossible. The only true failure is not trying at all. And most importantly, remember this: success doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, effort, and persistence. But if you stick with it, one day you'll look back and realize just how far you've come. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.